Zat Hashem, today in Masechet Shabbat, we're going to learn Yud Bet Amud Aleph. We're starting the bottom of Yud Aleph Amud Bet. We left off yesterday with a kasha. Question. Third to last line on the page. We're going to have 3 sections today. Zat Hashem will get through. Very interesting material we're going to discuss today. Happens to be a lot of different halachot. Very interesting stuff. The first, we're going to figure out, finally, the answer to the stira and the braitaot about zav. We'll figure that out. The second we'll get into, which is another discussion, really a separate discussion about Shabbat. There's certain leniencies, Erev Shabbat we'll get to, carrying. And the final section, actually 4 sections today. The third section, come in. The third section we'll deal with is about killing lice on Shabbat. It's a fascinating idea. Mutar to kill is it allowed to kill lice on Shabbat? Kinim.
Lice on Shabbat?
Kinim. Are you allowed to kill kinim on Shabbat? We're going to get into the discussion also, because we said in the Mishnah, lo yifalet kelav. We'll get to that. And then the last thing we'll get into, a beginning really, which we'll get to more next week, is certain behaviors we're not allowed to do on Shabbat because it's an issue of chefzo, meaning it's like the weekday business. We'll get into a discussion. Like chefzo, mevo chefzo, the pasuk talks about where you're not allowed to do weekday behaviors. So we'll see, that gets into a topic, Bezat Hashem, we'll get to that at the end of today. So let's get started here. Remember, let's remember where we're holding here. Let's do a quick recap where we're holding. We left off yesterday, we had a stira and 2 braitaot. What was the stira? One braita said that a zav is allowed to go out on Shabbat bikiso. Kiso is a pouch that he used to wear so that the flow would stay in his pouch.
So it indicates now and not really tanifgam.
No, so hold on with your reasons. Hold on. The other braita says meaning one braita says it's patur aval asur, means it's not asur d'oraita, it's only asur midrabanan. So that's not hotza'a midoraita. But the other braita said it's hotza'a d'oraita, that's going to be an asur d'oraita. So we gave one answer yesterday, which was Rav Yosef. He tried to say it's a machloket Rav Meir Rabbi Yehuda. It was rejected by Abaye. We gave a second answer yesterday, which was Rav Hamnuna, who tried to say it's a difference if it's a 3 times zav or a 2 times zav. So let's just explain again. If the zav saw 2 times, so we said he needs that keys to know something important. It's chashuv, it's significant. This is derech hotza'ah bekach, you could call it. It's the normal way of hotza'ah, because he has a important usage to know if I have another flow, then I have to bring a korban. So then you'll be chayav midoraita because that's considered significant hotza'ah. I want to get that very clear. If there's a chashivut to it, it's a problem of hotza'ah midoraita. If there's not a chashivut, it's easier to say it's not an issue, midoraita. Midrabanan, it still will be an issue. But if he was a 3 times zav, said the Gemara, and we added, and his 3rd ziva flow was on Shabbat, so he could only start counting his 7 days on Sunday, so there, the kiss is not considered significant. Right. Good? We left off with a kasha, but we said, even if for halachot of ziva it's not important, but there is something that it's important for. What is it important for? You don't want your clothing to get dirty. So, for that purpose alone, it has chashivut, and it should be hotza'ah on Shabbat. So why are you not chayav midoraita by the 3 times zav as well? You don't want to get your clothing dirty. That is chashivut, that's hotza'ah. That was the kasha we left off with.
But why there is no chashivut for the pouch if it's happening in Shabbat? Because it's still in the second...
the third thing happened on Shabbat.
I understand, but it's happening in Shabbat.
Right.
So before that it was in the second time. He didn't...
In the morning on Shabbat he had his 3rd flow. Then he went outside with the pouch.
Then he went outside.
Yeah. So,
but what happened if it's outside?
I don't know what happened. That's the case. Don't know.
The case is basically if it's happened to him during Shabbat and then he left.
And then he left.
Okay,
Good.
But there is another situation that can be that it's outside.
That's what I'm talking about.
I got you.
So now, for ziva, it's not chashuv. I get it. But it is chashuv because you don't want your pants to get dirty. So, kasha. Okay, so you're back to the problem. Now it is derech hotza'ah bekach because this is something important. Meilei chayav d'oraita. Why not chayav d'oraita? The Gemara is going to say such a chidush. I want to tell it outside and then we'll see it inside. Let's just read the kasha and then I'll tell you outside. We're holding the 3rd to last line on the page. Says the Gemara, "V'hami ba'ilei kedei shelo yitanfu kelav." But he needs it so that his clothing don't get dirty. So it is chashuv. Now let me just explain something here before we see this inside. This is a different halacha, but we're going to try to tie it together. In order for, let's say, an apple to become tameh, it has to be mukhshar lekabel tum'ah. What does that mean? It has to be prepared to receive tum'ah.
So you wash it?
Oh, beautiful. So the Mishnayot tell us that there are 7 liquids that if they fall on perot, it's actually a pasuk, I'll read it to you in a minute, it makes those perot or zraim or seeds mukhsharim lekabel tum'ah. Now they are prepared to receive tum'ah. So if they're in contact with one of those liquids, and then they're in contact with something that's tameh, they become tameh. Good? So meaning you need the mukhshar before it becomes tameh with something. The pasuk tells us in Parashat Shmini, listen to this, it says, V'chiyutan mayim al zera. If he puts mayim, yutan means it is placed, not that you put it. Yutan, it's placed, meaning almost by itself. Al zera, on seeds, v'nafal minivlatam alav, and then something tameh falls on it. Tameh hu lachem, it becomes tameh. Now, the way we read it is yutan, which is mashma by itself. Water went on it by itself. But the way it can be read is iten. Now what is iten mashma?
Will give.
He puts it. So yutan is mashma, it went on by itself. Iten is mashma, iten is that the owner of the item put it on directly. So from this, Chazal deduced the following rule. You don't have to put water on it, but it has to be put on in a way that you wanted it. If you wanted that water, one of the 7 liquids, so then when the water or the liquid goes on the fruit, it makes it mukhshar lekabel tum'ah. Meaning yutan is domet to iten, basically. If it falls on it and you're agreeable to that water, you're happy with it, so then the item that it comes in contact with becomes mukhshar lekabel tum'ah.
So when is it mukhshar?
But if you don't want it, meaning if you don't want that water, you didn't want this to happen, it does not make the fruit it fell on mukhshar lekabel tum'ah.
So it's depend of your kavanah.
Exactly, it's talui in your kavanah. Exactly. Liquid could go on the fruit, but you don't want that, it's not mukhshar lekabel tum'ah. But if it goes on it by itself and you're happy with it, it is mukhshar lekabel tum'ah. Now listen to this.
But if
the
you
trick
put
here.
Yutan and iten, it's 2 different meanings, right?
Exactly.
Because
We're
you
saying
do it in purpose to do it.
Exactly. We're saying
Yutan
yutan domet li'iten. That's what we're saying. We're saying even if it falls on it by itself, but you're agreeable like iten, as if you put it, it's mukhshar lekabel tum'ah. But if it goes on and you don't want it, not mukhshar lekabel tum'ah. Now listen good to the following point. This is even if you didn't want the water to go on the fruit necessarily, but you're just happy with the water. Even if you don't necessarily want the water to go on the fruit, but you would just want the water itself, that would also make it, if it falls on the fruit after, mukhshar lekabel tum'ah. Okay?
No,
No.
I get. Because the water spill on the fruit. So now the fruit is ready to receive tum'ah.
Let me give you an example and I'll explain. If you want that water and it falls on the fruit, it's mukhshar lekabel tum'ah. It's not only where you want it to go on the fruit, it's even if you just want that water. So I'll give you an example that we're going to see from a Mishnah Machshirin. And this is going to be the Tana. We're going to try to say holds here that it shouldn't be considered chashuv for hotza'ah. The case we're going to have there is like this. If somebody set up a plate on top of a wall on Shabbat, a plate on top of a wall, because he didn't want that wall to get wet. So that means he doesn't want the water. So in such a case, if that water hits the plate and then falls on fruit, that's not considered mukhshar lekabel tum'ah because you don't want that water. You never wanted it. Okay? Good. But if he set up a dirty plate on top of a wall that he wants the rain to wash clean, that means he wants the water. He wants the water. And if he wants the water, what will happen now is when it hits the plate and slides off and hits fruit, the fruit are now mukhshar lekabel tum'ah.
Although,
you understand what I just said?
It's not a direct kavanah.
He doesn't want the water on the fruit. He just wants the water for its usage, and that makes the fruit now mukhshar lekabel tum'ah.
Because you want the water, it takes from you the choice if you want it on the fruit or not.
Because it gives you a benefit.
Exactly, because you want it for a benefit.
You want the water for benefits. You don't want the water on the fruits, but because they begin with
it does give you a benefit.
You do want the water. When the water goes on the fruit, automatically.
Now listen to the chap. Listen to the chap here. What we're trying to say. What are we trying to bring from this?
If the pouch is giving him a benefit.
Oh, no. The opposite. Mamish, the opposite. Listen to this. If the purpose of the plate on top of the wall is just to prevent the wall from being damaged, that means you don't want the water at all. And therefore, that would not be considered chashuv to make fruits mukhshar lekabel tum'ah. So says the Gemara, it's the same thing here. If the purpose of the pouch is only to prevent your clothing from becoming dirty, that's not chashuv and it's not hotza'ah on Shabbat. You hear the dimyon we just said? It's a very interesting dimyon.
I get it.
If the plate is only to block the water from the wall, so that means you don't want that water. If that water falls in the fruit, it's not mukhshar lekabel tum'ah. Similarly, says the Gemara, it's the same Tana of that Mishnah Machshirin here, of the Braita that says, the pouch, since you only want to use it so your clothing don't get dirty, it's not considered chashuv for hotza'ah on Shabbat.
But it does give you benefit.
Okay, so the Gemara is going to refute this in a minute. It's going to be a kasha. But you hear the dimyon? We're saying if it's only to prevent something from getting wet or damaged, it's not chashuv.
But we're still using this water, even if it's not with a direct contact on the apple or the fruit, to clean the plate.
No, that's two different cases.
Wait.
Yeah.
Even though it's to prevent the wall or whatever to get dirty, it's still giving me the water, the rain benefit to clean my plate.
In the case where it's dirty.
Right.
But if it's not, then you don't want it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but there's two cases here.
I get it.
Yeah.
But my intention is that it's going to give me a benefit.
If it's dirty.
The water.
If it's dirty.
Right. In this case, you said that the pouch is not hotza'ah, but if there is a benefit from the pouch.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. Yes. Let's see it inside. Let's see it inside now. Good. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Zera, second last line on the page, Yadalef Amud Bet, Rabbi Zera, Hi Tanahu. This is the Tana. I'll show you a Tana in Shas, who holds that where it's only to prevent something getting dirty, it's not considered chashuv. Da'amar kol atzulei tinof lo kachashiv. That anything that's just to prevent dirtying is not significant. It's not chashuv. The Tanan, because the Mishnah Machshirin tells us, hakofeh ka'ara ala kotel. If somebody sees it's raining and he doesn't want the wall to get wet, so he turns a plate over a wall to cover the wall. Now look, if he wants the plate to get clean because it's dirty, that means that he wants that water. This would be included in chiyutan, which means if it would fall off the plate and go on fruits, the fruits would be mukhshar lekabel tum'ah, because he wanted that water in the beginning. Turning to Yudbet Amud Aleph, shelo yilkeh kotel. However, if his intention is just the wall doesn't get wet, doesn't get damaged, so he really doesn't want the water, and if that water would then fall off the plate and go onto fruit, it would not be mukhshar lekabel tum'ah. So says the Gemara, the same way in that second case, he just wants to block the wall from getting wet. It's not chashuv that the fruits will now, if it reaches the fruits after, mukhshar lekabel tum'ah. So too, the pouch of the zav, which is just to prevent the ziva from dirtying his clothing, is not chashuv for hotza'ah on Shabbat. It's a big chidush what we just said. There's a big issue with what I just said, but the chidush we're saying is, if you want the plate to just block the wall, that means you don't want the water, it's just there to block the water from hitting the wall, that's not chashuv.
But there is two ways to the plate. One that is prevent the wall to get wet, and one that is actually to clean the plate from the water.
Case. The first case is the second case you just said, and that's not comparable to our case. But the second case, where you want to prevent the wall from getting wet, is seemingly comparable to our case. You don't want your pants to get wet. So we're saying, you see, when you're only putting it there to prevent something from getting miluchlach, from getting dirty or wet, it's not chashuv. But we're comparing, I want to show it clearly. We're comparing it for mukhshar lekabel tum'ah to hotza'ah on Shabbat.
We're not really in the direct contact with the mukhshar lekabel tum'ah. We're basically using the plate that is actually preventing the wall from getting wet to the pouch that is preventing the person to get dirty.
So what's the chiluk? Tell me a chiluk, no?
I think so, but the first case, when you put in the plate, just to prevent the wall, the law direct. It's like the water that's spilled on the fruit, זה כמו, איך אומרים את זה?
זה קרשע דנחלה.
Say even more, say even more.
זה לא... First of all, it's not for sure that gonna get the water on the fruit, but besides that, זה כמו... זה פעולה נמשכת כזה, זה לא directly.
That's true.
זה יורד ומטפטף, I do my protect the wall, זה יורד על זה.
Okay, here.
זה נמשך. פה אתה ממש לוקח את הפאוץ'.
It's like a grama almost.
בדיוק גרמה. זה רוצה להגיד גרמה.
I hear what you're saying.
בפאוץ' זה לא גרמה, בפאוץ' זה ממש direct.
Okay, so you're saying already more deep. The Gemara says a very simple chiluk. You can't compare these cases. You can't tell me that's the Tana of the Braita. In terms of making food mukhshar lekabel tum'ah, it needs to be you want the water. Here, when you put the plate, you don't want the water.
To begin with.
You don't want the water altogether. Of course the fruits are not mukhshar lekabel tum'ah. But Matan was just saying this. But the kis, what do you want it for?
To prevent.
You want it for an independent purpose, which is so your pants don't get wet, which means you want that kis. You don't want the ziva inside. That has nothing to do with it. It's a prevention from your pants getting wet. That is considered something that's significant. It's helping you out in a productive way. So how can you say, because it's not chashuv for mukhshar lekabel tumah, it's not chashuv for hotzah and Shabbat, they're two different things altogether. You can't even compare the two. That's what the Gemara is about to say. You don't want the water, so it's not machshir the fruits, lekabel tumah. That's true. But you do want the kis, and that's hotzah and Shabbat, because it's giving you this productive benefit. The Gemara says, let's read that inside. Says the Gemara, Midami, top of Yud Bet Amud Aleph, is this comparable? Hatam in the Mishnah Machshirin lo kabaylahu lahani mashkin klal. He does not want this liquid at all. He just wants the water to not damage the wall. He doesn't want the water in the first place. So therefore, if that water touches fruits, they're not mukhshar lekabel tumah. It's not yutan. He doesn't want it.
In case that the outcome of the water, they touch the fruit, and he's happy with that, then...
That's a different story. That's not what we're talking about.
He can rely on it.
That's a different story. Hacha, but in the case of Zav, kabaylahu lahai kis lekibule beziva. He wants the kis. He wants that pouch to contain the ziva. So since he wants it, that's derech hotzah bekach, and you should be chayav on Shabbat. Back to the question. Why are you not chayav? And the Gemara even takes it a step further. If you want to compare this case of Zav to a case in Machshirin, I'll show you a different case that it is comparable to, and in that case, actually, it is chashuv. That's what the Gemara is about to do. You want to compare our Braita about Zav to a case of Machshirin, of water and putting something to block water. I'll show you a case it is comparable to in Masechet Machshirin, and that's a case that would say it is chashuv. Let me just explain the case outside. The case is water is dripping. It doesn't say clearly, but water is dripping from the ceiling, let's say, and you don't want water to reach the floor. So what you do is you put a bowl under the water. And some people in Miami, we have this. I remember growing up, whenever there was a hurricane, we used to have a couple places that... So you put a bowl to catch the water, right? Now like this, listen to this. The Mishnah Machshir, we're going to show a different Mishnah, says as follows. If the water goes into and bounces out of the bowl and goes elsewhere, so that water is not mukhshar lekabel tum'ah, because really your main intention is to block it from damaging the floor.
And you don't want the water, obviously.
Oh, but if it's caught inside of the bowl, why would you use a bowl and not a plate or something like that? Why would you use a bowl particularly?
Because
you could have used
it can carry more.
It can carry more water, but it seems also part of the kavanah here would be you're happy with the water that remains inside. Means you'll use the water for something.
But it's not lechatchila.
But listen. If he wants to use
for the plant, there's a good water.
He can have a benefit, but it's not.
But what the point is, the Mishnah in Machshirin there, it's a different Mishnah. It says in such a case, the water that remains inside, you're not going to spill it. You're going to use it. So what does that show? It shows that where you do have chashivut for the water, it does have chashivut. So if you want to compare the case of Zav to anything, says the Gemara, compare it to that. And then it's an issue on Shabbat of Hotza'ah. So we're back to the question. Just saying is if you do want to compare it to something, that's what you could compare it to. Let's read that inside. So the Gemara says, Halo dami el seifa. It's only comparable to the seifa, to the end, which is a Mishnah later in Machshirin. Areva sheyarad delef letocha. If there's a bowl that the leak went inside of it. So mayim anitazin v'anitzbin, water that splashes or spills out of it, enan b'chiyutan. So that's not considered able to make other fruits mukhshal lekabel tum'ah, because you don't benefit, you don't want that. V'shebetocha, but that implies that the water that remains inside that you want, hareze v'chiyutan. That is an issue of kiyutan because you have chashivut for it. So says the Gemara, if you want to start comparing our Braita of Zav to the Mishnayot and Machshirin, this would be the comparison. And then it would come out, since you want the keys to contain the ziva, you do have a chashivut in that it will be Hotzah on Shabbat. So back to the question, which is, why does one Braita say you're not chayav midoraita, and the other one says you are chayav midoraita? First answer, second answer, rejected. So the Gemara tells us the third and final answer, and this will be a very important machloket throughout Masechet Shabbat, which is called milacha she'ena tzricha legufa. Milacha, a work that you don't need for itself. So what the Gemara is going to say, this idea of the pouch that contains the ziva, it's a melacha she'ena tzricha legufa. Now, there's a machloket we'll see later in the Masechta between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon if melacha she'ena tzricha legufa is chayav or patur. Rabbi Shimon holds your patur midoraita, it's still asur midrabanan. What is melacha she'ena tzricha legufa? So there's a machloket in the Rishonim how to explain this. We're going to go with Rashi. Simple, like Rashi. Tosafot is a bit of a different idea, but let's go with Rashi. Rashi learns like this. Melacha she'ena tzricha legufa is as follows. We know, in order to be chayav on Shabbat, you need melechet machshevet. Melechet machshevet means calculated labor. It's a simple translation. You have an intention. There's a kavanah. There's a focus in what you're doing. Okay. In the Mishkan, when they did these melachot, which is where we learn the lamed tet melachot from, there was an intention associated with the melacha. So therefore, if you do the melacha without the same intention, and I'm going to explain like Rashi, instead of trying to accomplish the productive purpose of that melacha, you just want to remove something negative. If that's your intention, according to Rabbi Shimon, you're not chayav deoraita. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you are chayav midoraita. Let me give you the case they argue, and we'll understand better. The case they argue is, lo aleinu, somebody passes away in the house on Shabbat. You want to take the body and put it outside in the Reshut HaRabim. Okay, it's right.
That it was outside in the sun, and they found a way to carry him.
You want to take the body from the Reshut HaYachid to Reshut HaRabim. That's Hotza'ah. But the reason you're doing it is not because you want the production. The reason you're doing it is not because you want the production, which would usually be Hotza'ah, to put it into the Reshut HaRabim. The reason you're doing it is because you don't want it in your house. So it's to remove a problem. It's to remove an issue right now. It's not for the normal production of Hotza'ah, which would be Melechet Machshevet, to put it into Reshut HaRabim. You don't really care about that so much. Your focus is more to remove the body from the house. That's the focus. So Rabbi Yehuda says, even though your intention is not necessarily the normal intention of Hotza'ah, this is still considered productive labor in your Chayav on Shabbat. Rabbi Shimon says no, midoraita. This is not considered the labor like in the Mishkan because you're not doing it to put it in Reshut HaRabim as much as to get it out of the Reshut HaYachid to remove the issue, and therefore it's melacha she'ena tzricha legufa and you're patur midoraita, but it's asur midrabanan. Now let's tie it back here. In regards to this case, why is he going around with this pouch? Because he doesn't want his pants to get dirty. He doesn't want to carry it in Reshut HaRabim. Doesn't care. That's not his focus. He doesn't want his pants to get dirty. Says Rabbi Shimon, this is melacha she'ena tzricha legufa. It's to prevent a problem, to prevent an issue of his pants getting dirty, and therefore you're not chayav midoraita for hotza'ah. It's asur midrabanan. Rabbi Yehuda says, we don't care that that's your intention. It still has a productive purpose, and that's chayav midoraita. So that's how we're answering the two braitaot. Clear? Okay, good. Let's see this inside. Very important yesod happens to be. Let's read that inside. So the Gemara says, Ela Abai ve'Rava Dami Tarvayu. Abai and Rava both say lo kashya. No problem. Ha Rabbi Yehuda. The second braita that says you're chayav midoraita is Rabbi Yehuda who says melacha she'ena tzricha legufa is chayav midoraita. But Rabbi Shimon, the first one says patur aval asur, is Rabbi Shimon. Let's continue. A very interesting associated halacha in the second section. Tani Dber Rabbi Yishmael was taught in the Beit Midrash Rabbi Yishmael. Yotze Adam b'tefillin be'erev Shabbat im chashecha. You are allowed to go out on Erev Shabbat with your tefillin. Now, we said you're not allowed to go out with your machatin because you might carry it on Shabbat. So why are you allowed to go out with your tefillin on Erev Shabbat? Maybe you'll carry it on Shabbat. By the way, on the side, wearing tefillin on Shabbat, it's actually machloket. But b'kitzur, wearing tefillin on Shabbat is isur d'Rabbanan. It's not isur d'Oraita. But the Rabbi Yishmael here is teaching you could go out on Erev Shabbat with your tefillin. Why are we not worried you might continue on Shabbat wearing your tefillin?
Because you don't wear tefillin at night.
Okay, you don't usually. Maybe you'll forget.
It's very visible and it's almost impossible. For people are gonna tell you, hey.
People are gonna tell you.
Oh, it's.
But a machtin also, the people will tell you. We have a gzera there. Why don't we make gzera here?
On
more
tefillin,
than that, because what about tefillin is significant?
On tefillin, it's very visible.
Why are we not worried you might continue to wear it on Shabbat?
Asleep.
No, why are we not worried you're going to? Okay, I hear. So the Gemara says a very, very practical halacha. By the way, the Gemara says a very practical halacha. He's saying when you change your clothes for Shabbat, but let's say he already got dressed. He put on his tefillin half an hour. He changed before. He put on his tefillin half an hour before Shabbat, which is mutar, by the way.
He has to wash his for the seuda also.
No, but already I'm talking about Erev Shabbat. There's no gzera.
Okay.
So it's a problem. Why are you allowed to go outside?
You have to take a shower also.
It should be half an hour before Shabbat. The same gzera, like by the machat.
Arvit, ma.
He took a shower.
He took a shower. He got dressed, and now he's going to.
You have to remove the tefillin before.
He wants to put. Okay, but he wants to put on tefillin, like we said, half an hour before Shkia, like we said, which is asur by the Chayat. Why is not asur here to wear tefillin like this? So the Gemara says a fascinating svara. It's very practical. It says like this: my taima, kiva da amar Rabba bar Rav Huna. Rabba bar Rav Huna taught chayav adam lemashmesh b'tefillin kol sha'a v'sha'a. When you're wearing tefillin, you have to constantly be focused on your tefillin. You're not a mesiach da'at from your tefillin, so you're constantly checking that. So for sure, he's going to check it before Shabbat, and he'll take it off. That's a very important yesod, by the way. When we're wearing tefillin, you find sometimes people wearing tefillin, they're just schmoozing with another person about whatever. You need to remain focused. It's even brought down is like in the Amidah, when you're davening, you're focusing on Hashem. But that's included in focusing on tefillin. But stam to schmooze with somebody, that's why you find sometimes people are talking, they'll touch their tefillin a lot, because it's to remain focused on tefillin.
The Sidurim say on top, all the pages.
When you touch it before Hashem Sefadat Yiftach, it's like a crown.
Exactly. It's important to remember.
Some Sfarim Sidurim, they saw on top of the old pages.
Hashem's name. Oh, lo yasiyach. Exactly.
Yeah.
So therefore, you're for sure going to check it before Shabbat, and you'll take it off. That's a different story. He says, and a very interesting idea. How do we know you're supposed to check your tefillin all the time? Kal vachomer mitzitz. It's a kal vachomer we learned from the tzitz. In Parashat Tetzaveh, we just had it. We spoke about the clothing that the Kohen Gadol used to wear, special clothing. So one of them was the tzitz. What was the tzitz? It was a gold plate that was across the forehead of the Kohen Gadol. Now, by the tzitz, the pasuk tells us, V'haya al metzach Aaron. It should be on his forehead. And then later it says it again, V'haya al metzchot tamid. So why does it say it twice? It should be on his forehead constantly. So the Gemara says it teaches us that he has to constantly be aware that it's there. Let's see that inside. The tzitz has only one name. It says Kodesh LaHashem on the tzitz. It only has one name of Hashem. Amrat Torah, and the Torah says Vayal Metzchot Tamid, is that it should be constantly in his head, which the extra drasha teaches us. Shalo yasiach da'ato mimenu. He's not allowed to remove his focus from these big day keuna, the tzitz. So tefillin sheyesh bahen askarot arbe, your tefillin have many mentions of Hashem's name in the parshiyot. Many kal vacho al achat kama v'kama. Certainly you have to be focused on your tefillin. So says the Gemara, you're going to check before Shabbat, and therefore it's not going to be a problem. So tefillin is a kula.
Yeah, but
not so practical for us today because we don't wear tefillin all day. They used to wear tefillin all day, so they would take it off before Shabbat. Some people, but most people don't. No, there are people in Yerushalayim. You have like these, holy people. I have a cousin I think that lived there. It's like very, All right. Hilkach midkar dachir, therefore he'll remember them. Let's continue. Tanya, we say this. I think Friday night we say this. Tanya Chananya Omer. Chananya taught in a braita. Chayav adam lemashmesh bevigdo erev Shabbat im chashecha. You should check your clothing before Shabbat as it's beginning to get to be close to Shabbat. Why? Rashi says, make sure you're not holding anything, because if you're holding something and you walk on Shabbat, it could be hotza'ah. So it's a good idea to check your pockets, etc. And so that now today we have eruv, so it might be a little bit different, but especially when you don't live with an eruv, you should check your clothing, make sure you're not holding anything. I guess it's a good idea to check for muktzah anyways. Maybe you left your phone in your pocket, so still it's a good idea.
It's also there's a V'yara Be'orot Tshuva, שעושה את זה.
Yeah.
ילקוט יוסף.
Okay.
Many times I find things in my pocket.
Right, a pen, money.
Because we were in the clothing from Melave Malka. It's good to eat the Melave Malka with the clothing for Shabbat. So by the time of Melave Malka, maybe you go to buy pizza or something. You already have your phone and your money.
Credit card, right. Amar Rav Yosef concludes, Hilcheta Rabati Shabbat. This is a very important halacha for Shabbat. Check your clothing before Shabbat. It's a very important warning, azara, so that we don't end up doing something asur on Shabbat. Let's move on now to the third section. Lo yefalet kelav. Now, if we look back at the Mishnah, we had two rules next to each other. Mishnah, bottom of Yud Aleph and Wud Aleph. We said like this. First we talked about things before Shabbat, and then we spoke about on Shabbat. We said, V'lo yefalet kelav.
We mentioned that before.
This is a Mishnah.
We mentioned that before.
In our Mishnah? Yeah. No, I'm just... It's at least. Lo yefalet kelav. He should not... Yefaleh means to take the lice out of. To take the lice out of it. Kinim. To shake it out. However that was done, they would take the lice out of it.
Kelav is what?
Clothing.
Clothing?
Vessels. Kelav. Clothing. In the context here, it means clothing. It does mean that sometimes. V'lo yikra le'or ner. And he also should not read by the light of the candle. And we said, what's the reason you can't read by the light of the candle on Shabbat? You might turn the wick in order that it burns brighter because you can't see so well, causing more oil to go to the wick, which is havara on Shabbat. That's Isur D'Oraita. So the question the Gemara is going to have is like this. How do you read the Mishnah? Are these both one rule, or is it two different rules?
Which one?
Lo yefaleh and lo yikra le'or ner.
So
listen. There's two ways to read it. One way to read it is Lo yefaleh, don't take the lice out of the clothing on Shabbat because you might kill the kinim. You might kill the lice.
With the fire?
Which would be, no, you might just kill the lice. This is one rule. And that would be an issue of netilat neshama. You're not allowed to kill something on Shabbat. And then a separate rule, which is Lo yikra le'or ner shema yateh. So one way to look at it is two different rules. The other way to look at it is Lo yefaleh le'or haner. Meaning, it's the same rule, which means the first rule is lo yefaleh. You can't take the kinim out of the clothing on Shabbat le'or haner because shema yateh. You might tilt the candle and
small items and
you can't see so good. And lo yikra le'or haner, but they're the same. There's two isurim, but they're the same reason. Then, now what would be the nafkamina? What would be the nafkamina if you learn the first way or the second way? So we're going to see there's a machloket. Are you allowed to kill kinim on Shabbat? Is it a sort? Actually, through three shitot. The oraita, it's a sort rabbanan, or
what's the difference
mutar
between to other animals?
So we'll see. Kinim. This is how Rashi explains. Rashi says something fascinating here. Rashi says, kina. We learn out from the Mishkan. This is going to be a machloket, but we learn out from the Mishkan that they used in the Mishkan these elim adamim. They used the skins of the rams. So from this we learn the animals you're not allowed to kill on Shabbat. Netilat neshama is something like a ram that is para v'rabah, that it reproduces like a ram. Kinim, this is fascinating, he says, Kina ena para v'rava ela mibsar adam hi shoretzet.
Where do you see it?
Rashi says something very, it's the third to last line in Rashi, but he says, Kina does not reproduce like that, it just comes from the sweat or the flesh of a person. Now, I was just looking around trying to figure out what that means because kinim definitely reproduce. So the way I saw it understood, explained, was that kinim are talking about something that you can't see with your eye. If you can't see something with your eye, so it's not considered chashuv in halacha, and therefore we don't look at it as normal reproduction, as not like other animals, and therefore it's like something that just like emerges on its own. So that would not be an isur of netilat neshama necessarily. That's a very interesting chidush.
Again, why? Because we compare
if you
the
can't
netilat neshama
from elim, only things that reproduce like elim. Since kinim don't reproduce like elim, so that's what Rashi says. The shoretzet mibsara adam. What does it mean? It like sprouts from the flesh of a person. What does it mean? It means, that's how the Mefarshim I saw brought down say, you can't see these things really. They're not visible by the naked eye with your eye. So that's not chashuv in halacha. We look at it as if it just appears. It doesn't really reproduce like other animals. That's what I saw brought down.
It's like checking a vegetable If you cannot
exactly.
see it with
Vegetables,
your
the
eye,
same story.
If it's batel, if it's less than batel,
Exactly. Now there's going to be a machloket, but the machloket will fit back into our Mishnah, because if you say it's two different reasons for isur, so the reason you can't clean the lice out of your kelim is because we're worried you might kill the lice, which means then we'll be saying there's an isur d'oraita to kill the lice. But if you read it together with the same reason of lo yikra le'or haner, so then really you're allowed to kill the lice on Shabbat. We're worried if you...
But this is lechatchila.
1 second. We're worried if you take the lice out or on there, you might tilt the candle, but it's not an isur to kill the lice. There's two ways to read this in the Mishnah. Let's read that inside.
But don't do that with the nail.
Exactly. Let's read that inside.
But this sounds like...
Lo yifaleh. What?
Not melechet machshevet, but it sounds like you have an intention directly to kill the lice.
It will be gzera. It will be gzera. It will be gzera. Either way, it's a gzera. The question is, what's the gzera? Let's see. Lo yifaleh kelav. The Gemara says the following sheila. Question. Lo yifaleh kelav beyom. Are you not even allowed to delouse, means take the lice out of the vessels during the day, even the day of Shabbat? Why? Because Shema Yarod, you might kill the lice. Meaning this would be the nafkamina. If it's an issue of killing it, that's not just an issue by the light, it's an issue during the day also. It's a gzera. If you take it out, you might kill it. And it's asur d'oraita to kill it. For Rabbi Eliezer, and it follows the position of Rabbi Eliezer. The Tanya Amar Rabbi Eliezer, haoreg kina b'Shabbat kilo haoreg gamal. Here's an example. If you kill a camel, for sure you're chayami d'oraita. It's a large animal. So he says kina is the same thing. He holds kina is d'oraita. And then the second rule of the Mishnah would be v'lo yikra le'or haner shema yateh. It's a separate rule, which is don't read by the light of the candle because you might tilt the candle, which would be havara. Now the first way of reading it is two different reasons for isur. Odilmar, perhaps tarvayu shemayate. Maybe you'll say both actions are shemayate. The isur is only to take the lice out or haner, but it's not asur to kill those the kinim, and therefore that would be a different way to read it.
So we're not allowed to, and also we have to be careful. Don't do that next to the nail. No. The second way we're reading, the second way.
No,
there's two ways to read the Mishnah.
One, lo yifaleh kelav.
Exact, nothing to do with or haner. This is yamayate. Which means that the isser would only be because shemayate. Only because shemayate. We're trying to figure out in the Mishnah. That's his shita. Rabbi Eliezer holds that you can't kill lice. There's a machloket about this. We're going to see. Comes up, there's a machloket soon.
If you read it as a one line, as a one issue.
It's not like Rabbi Eliezer. Exactly, it's not Rabbi Eliezer. Exactly. That's going to be three shitot here, we'll see. It's either d'oraita, d'rabanan, or mutar. We'll see, we'll get to it soon. But that's the sheila. What is the pshat in the Mishnah? So let's see. So Tashma, the Gemara says, let's bring a proof from a braita. The braita says as follows. We're going to prove the second approach, the second way that we just read it. Ein polin, you can't clean the lice out. Ve'en korin or haner. And you also can't read something by the light of the candle. Now the braita seems to group them together. You see? Ein polin ve'en korin or haner. So if it groups it together, it seems like it's the same reason for isur, which is shemayate. So it's not because you can't kill it. It just puts it together. So it seems like it's not like Rabbi Eliezer. It's only a reason of you might tilt the candle. And this seems to prove like the second option that we set out before. So the Gemara says, I don't understand your proof. Is this any stronger than our Mishnah? Means our Mishnah puts these two rules one after the other, and we're not sure what the reason is not cleaning out the lice. Here it also puts them together. We don't know if it's the same reason or two different reasons. So how's that any more of a proof than our Mishnah? That can't be a proof. So Tosafot says...
I said it, what you said right now. Tashamayim punin ven kurilovaner.
Right.
Mashmot abaita. That
it sounds like it groups them together.
To move the lice.
Grouping it together seems to be it's the same underlying reason, which is shemayate. So the Gemara says that's not a proof. And the Mishnah also puts them together, and we don't know if it's the same reason or two different reasons. Why is the Braita any more of a proof than the Mishnah? It's not. So Tosafot says, what was the Hava Amina here? Oh, you understand, Matan? What was the Hava Amina? It is like our Mishnah. It puts the two Isuim next to each other, and we don't know if it's one reason or two reasons. So what was the Hava Amina?
Must be some special case or something that is.
So Tosafot says very important Yesod. Braita and Mishnah are different.
Mishnah is stronger than Braita.
Mishnah is stronger, but Mishnah is also much less
Minimize.
words.
Code,
Exactly.
code.
Much more short form.
Less details.
Exactly. So therefore, Tosafot says, the one who tried to bring a proof thought, since the Braita usually explains more, the fact that it doesn't say two reasons means it's only one reason. But the answer is, you can't necessarily prove from that. This is a yesod in general, which is, Mishnayot, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi compiled them in the smallest possible way. But Braitaot, they're much more extensive. They say things much clearer, much longer. That's okay. Let's continue. So now I bring a second proof, and this one is accepted. Tashma.
Look, it looks like the Tosfot is holding it's two different things.
No. Tosfot can't argue on a Gemara. No, hold on. Tashma.
What did
So let's go.
Tosfot said, Rabbi?
Which one?
Poshet.
No, he's saying what the Hava Amina. What was the Hava Amina? He's saying what was the Hava Amina. That was the Hava Amina. But he's saying the answer says, the Gemara says not a proof. Tachlis, it's not a proof. Tashma, let's go to the second proof. The Braita says, Ein polin le'or ner. Now look, this is a clear proof. Ein polin le'or ner. You can't take the lice out of the clothing le'or haner. Ve'ein korin le'or haner.
It's Tosefet.
Ein polin le'or haner. Ve'ein korin le'or haner.
You can kill the light next to the light.
Clearly, it's the same reason. Clearly, it's this. Allo, ein polin le'or haner. What's the problem?
The Shemayate.
Shemayate. If it was not Shemayate, if it was Shemiyarog, it's also Bayom Shabbat.
Okay.
So why does it say le'or haner?
So
Because it's an issue of Shemayate, not Shemayarog. Ve'ein korim le'or haner. It's the same reason, meaning the Braita says very clearly that the reason for the Isur is Shemayate, but not a proof like Rabbi Eliezer. Clear. The Mishnah did not say Shema L'or Haner. It just said Lo Yefalet Kelav. And then it said Ve'ein Korin L'or Haner. So this Braita clearly shows us that the Gzera is only because Shemayate. So we don't have a proof like Rabbi Eliezer. Exactly. So that's answered. That's a very clear proof. Exactly.
As you see here, that the Braita in this case is showing the Mishnah.
Exactly.
Very because good. The Mishnah doesn't give a details.
Excellent. Is that we find
like
very often. This is it. We go through it in Shas through a sugya.
That's very strong.
We have a Mishnah that's very unclear.
Because people just jump in. No, it's the Mishnah. Okay, it's Mishnah, but look, the Braita is.
That's why we also have Tosefta. But Tosefta is also a Tosefet on the Mishnah.
But all
the expand on the Mishnah, not Tosafot. Tosefta.
But all the Braitot, it's all very meticulous and legit. Every time when the Braita give me details, discover more things that wasn't on the Braita.
Wasn't a Mishnah.
No, Mishnah. It's we take it.
Well, no, it could be a machloket. That's why, like Matan said before, if we have a machloket between Mishnah and Braita, we follow Mishnah. Because Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, what he did, he took all of the teachings of the Tanaim and he compiled it into Shisha Sidarim, 6 orders, very meticulous how he did it. This is Psak Halacha. But everything that's outside of it, Braita, Tosefta, all of those things, it's not necessarily Psak Halacha, but it has the koach almost like a Mishnah, because it's also Tanaim. So it could be brought as a kasha, it could be brought as a raya, it could be brought as other things.
So if you say Mishnah, and I bring you a Braita, that give you put more light on
we
the
could
Mishnah.
Assume that's also
like in this case,
exactly. It could be.
If nobody agree about what I said,
it's mikubal. Exactly. There's no reason to assume otherwise, unless there's some reason to argue. That's the general rule. This is the general rule. Yes.
There is some situations that we learned that it's tam or there is machloket and it's end up in the air.
Yeah, that does
there is some.
We say teku, we say kasha, we say
teku,
it's true.
For example, right now with Rabbi Shimon.
Well, we just answered our question. That's a machloket. That's a machloket. We have a psak, but that is a machloket. Let's continue.
Really, the Mishnah said it's one thing to be careful. Don't read the lo haner,
which comes out. Which means it comes out if a person wanted to take the lice out Shabbat day. Shabbat day, it's mutar.
But not lo haner.
Because there's no honor. Exactly. We're not zera, you might kill it.
So no problem to kill kinai b'Shabbat.
So killing, that's what it seems like so far. We're going to see there's a few shitot now in the Braitot. We'll see. That's what it seems like from our Mishnah.
Because we're allowed to.
Let's see. We're running out of time. I have time to do still here. So the Braita finishes off. Elo min halachot she'amru ba'aliyat Chananya ben Chizkiya ben Garon. These were some of the halachot we just discussed that was discussed in the Aliyah, the attic of Hananiah ben Chizkiah ben Garon, there were debates between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. This was one of the halachot that was discussed in his attic. So Shema Mina,
they came from Bavel?
Aliyah's attic. Attic, yeah. Shema Mina. So we see from this that Tarvaya Shema Yateh, Shema Mina, both are because of Shema Yateh. Very clear. Let's continue on.
Done.
Yes, clear. Now let's move on to another halacha of Shema Yateh. Yochai already said this. If we read by the light of the candle, we're worried it might be getting a little darker. The oil will separate. You might tilt it. So what the Gemara is going to say now, it's a similar issue. If there's something in front of you you're trying to see clearly, it would be the same problem. Reading is just an example, be'etzem. If there's anything, if you have two items in front of you, you can't see them well, you're trying to see one from the other, it would be the same gzera because you might tilt the candle. So the example we're going to talk about is, guy wakes up, or it's Friday night and he wants to get dressed and it's dark and he has a candle. He can't tell if it's his clothing or is his wife's clothing. Now, it's dark, I guess you could imagine, and he wants to go to the light of the candle to differentiate between the clothing. It's a similar concern. Because if you're using the light of the candle for this, you might tilt the candle to make it more clear.
But maybe it's not the same.
But it's only going to be an issue where you and your wife's clothing are similar. If they're very different, you're not going to tilt the candle because it's very obvious what the difference is. But if you don't tilt the candle,
there is an issue? Because you said like...
It's gzera. So what we're going to say is, it's only a problem if the clothing are similar. But if they're not similar, you're not going to tilt the candle, so there's no gzera. Let's see it inside. Says the Gemara of Yudam Shmuel, "Afil lahavchin ben bigdo lebeged lebegdei ishto." Even if he wants to tell the difference between his clothing and his wife's clothing, it would be asur because he might tilt the candle because they look similar. Amar Rav lo amar nela de bnei mechuzah. This is only for the people of Mechuzah. Rashi explains that Bnei Mechuzah were a very pampered people. They lived it was like the city people. They lived a high lifestyle. They didn't work physical labor.
The society.
So they wore loose clothing. Very interesting. They didn't wear tight clothing like a farmer. I guess even today, a farmer wears jeans. He wears tight things. And it was like a woman, the loose clothing. So for them, if they had to tell the difference between their clothing and their wife's clothing, women also wore loose clothing. So it would be asur because they might tilt the candle. Aval dibnei chaklayata, but for the farmers, meida yadai, they will know because they wore tighter clothing, their women wore loose clothing, and therefore it was a clear difference. They would not tilt the candle. That would be mutar to tell the difference by the light of the fire. So
basically on that, if somebody is a chaklei, come to spend Shabbos by Bnei Mechuzah, he's allowed to because he
would be, yeah. Or the Bnei Mechuzah nami lo amaran, and even with Bnei Mechuzah, it's only a problem eladiz kenot. If his clothing is with old women's clothing, because the women used to wear, I guess, a little bit tighter clothing that was more similar to the men's. Aval dialdot, but if it was a younger women's clothing, which were much wider than the men's clothing, meida yadi, it'll be considered clear. So really it all comes down to is how much similar it is to the person's clothing. If it's very different, you don't have to worry. If it's close that you would be concerned, you can't tell by the or haner.
So if you're more concerned, you don't look. If you know that there is a difference, you can look.
Exactly.
So what about the guy?
Exactly. Yeah, go ahead.
No, so what about the guy that live in they're not in the Mechuzah, in the regular city, that's people, but he become rich and he changes his clothing and become already next to so he become a din of Mechuzah.
Yeah. I mean, tachlis today, clothing are so different. I'm not sure this is...
But remember, back then people used to jalabi.
I know, but Aval today... It's what men and women, especially amongst frum people, we wear such different clothing.
Yes, definitely. Exactly.
That could be pants, jeans, blazer, jeans. These things could really be.
Jacket,
literally, it could be the same.
Gun.
Tanu Avanan, let's go, yalla. Let's go. Finish up your chevra. Let's go. Tanu Avanan. Amefalet kilav. Now we're going to talk about 3 shitot.
But one place for sure, 100%, you're never allowed to do lefut lewaria.
What?
Beach.
What?
South Beach,
it's the same thing. זה אותו דבר.
שם עשו בטוח
לא יודעים מה זה בן ומה זה בת, זה הבעיה. תנו הבנן. Says the Braita, מפלט כליו מולל וזורק. If someone's cleaning the lice out of his kelim.
I think you jumped a little bit.
I did. No.
Yeah.
Oh, I skipped you. Sorry, you're right. תנו הבנן. Says the Braita, you're right. אין פולין ברשות הרבים. תודה. We don't take out. This is general law during the weekday. Bichlal, this is called kavod abriot. We're about to talk about respect for ovrim v'shavim, the people that are passing by. Ein polin b'rshut harabim b'nei kavod. It's not appropriate to clean the lice out of your clothing in reshut harabim because it disgusts people. It's mius. You're doing something disgusting for people around you. Kayotzebo, a similar idea. Amar Yehuda v'amar Rabbi Nechemia, ein osin apiktoizin. You can't do apiktoizin. Apiktoizin is a drink they would drink to cause themselves to throw up. So they used to do it, very interesting, either because they ate and they wanted to eat more, which sounds like a mental health issue to me, or because they ate too much and they feel sick. So they wanted to drink something to throw up. You can't drink that, apiktoizin, b'reshut harabim, mipnei kavod, because of honor of reshut harabim. You know what it's like is the people that they sit and they cut their nails in public or something. It's a disgusting thing to do. It's mius. You shouldn't do. I know that's something I see people do sometimes. Spitting in public in front of other people. Spitting in public.
Yes.
Now, spitting in public, if it's in the side, nobody. But like you're in front of a whole. It's a disgusting thing to do. It's something you have to be careful a little bit. Kavod abriot a little bit. It's not
It's
disgusting. Yeah.
He said here that what you mentioned that people needed to throw up. They do that before they eat. In order for they can eat better, they can eat more.
To me, like it seems a little bit like a mental health issue to me, like a little crazy.
They want to eat more.
In English, it's bulimic. There's something called bulimic. Somebody that eats and then they cause themselves to throw up.
But this is after they eat.
After they eat, right?
Here, before they eat, they drink it.
Pesach,
so they empty the stomach. Then they can.
Let's go, We're out of time. Let's go. Tana Abanan says the Braita. Terrible. Tana Abanan says the Braita. Now, in regards to cleaning the lice out of the vessels, we're going to see there's 3 shitot actually. Hamifalet kelav. So if somebody cleans the lice out of his vessel, molel v'zorek. So what he is allowed to do, molel, is to roll it and then throw it away. Now, if you roll it and throw it away, it disables them, meaning it doesn't kill them, but it will make sure that it doesn't come back to the clothing.
Okay.
So you're allowed to roll it and throw it away. Ubavad shelo yarov. You're not allowed to kill it. This Tanakama, this first shita holds, it's only an isur d'Rabbanan to kill the lice. So therefore you could roll it and throw it away. We're not worried you might kill it because even killing it would only be isur d'Rabbanan, but you're not allowed to kill it, it's isur d'Rabbanan. Abba Shal says, Notel v'zorek, no, it's actually isur d'oraita to kill it, and therefore you could take it and throw it away, ubilvad shelo yimlol, you're not allowed to roll it, because if you roll it, you might end up killing it, and that would be an isur d'oraita. We'll see that this is going to be reflected later. Amar Rav Huna paskins, halacha molel v'zorek. You actually are allowed to roll it and throw it away. We're going to paskin like Beit Hillel later. It's actually mutar to do, and that wouldn't be an issue. V'zeo kvodo, and actually, v'afilu b'chol, even during the week, this is the respectful thing to do. Very interesting. Even though you're really allowed to kill it, we're going to see Beit Hillel holds it's mutar to kill it. Nonetheless, it's kavod to not kill it. I don't know exactly what the word is, but it's kavod to not kill the lice and let it be and just throw it away. Rabba makta lehu. Rabba used to mikata lehu. Rabba used to kill them on Shabbat. Rav Sheshet mikata lehu. He would also kill them on Shabbat. And the reason they would is because they held, like Beit Hillel, we're going to see later, it's mutar to kill the lice on Shabbat. It's not a problem. Rava shadilu lakana demayin. A Rava would also kill it, but he would put it in a bucket of water. He didn't want to kill it directly, so put it in water, let it die by itself. But also, he wanted to show, we paskin like Beit Hillel, you are allowed to kill them on Shabbat. Amar Rav Nachman Labante, Rav Nachman used to tell his daughters, Kitzulin, kill them, kill these lice. Va'ashmo'inan li kala disanvati. It's a little bit harsh. I want to hear the sound of my enemies dying. Meaning he was saying, but why did he say this? It's a very strong thing to say. He was saying it because he wanted everyone to know the halacha is like Beit Hillel. He wanted to, he said, sometimes he says something a little strange so that people learn the halacha properly. So, what?
Vidu hariga. Confirming that they're killing the
confirmed kill?
הוא אומר פה בעירות שהם היו מצערים אותו.
מצערים?
היו מצערים אותו, אז הוא אומר לבנות, תוציאו ותראו לי
do it quickly? Like do it quickly?
No, take it out, his daughter was
because it was bothering him.
It bothered me, and זה ein משני.
It was bothering him, right. But the point is, he passed him like Beit Hillel. We're going to see now, it's mutar. It's completely mutar. Tanya says the Braita, Rav Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Ein horgin et ha'ma'acholet b'Shabbat divrei Beit Shammai. Beit Shammai holds you're not allowed to kill ma'acholet as kinim. You're not allowed to kill the kinim on Shabbat, the lice on Shabbat. Divrei Beit Shammai. So Beit Shammai holds it asur. Beit Hillel matirin, Beit Hillel says it's mutar. So this is the machloket. Beit Hillel says it's mutar. I just want to point out, before we said that Amar Rav Huna halacha molel v'zorek. So he says halacha, you're not allowed to kill it, but you could roll it and throw it away. But even though you could kill it because Beit Hillel says it's mutar, it's just more kvodo to not kill it. That's what it seems to be. The Gemara is actually saying.
What's the halacha? Molel v'zorek or killing?
So I see the tet there, which sounds like halacha molel v'zorek would be mutar, but don't kill it, even though be'etzem you're allowed to kill. That's what it seems to be. V'chein hayar Rav Shimon ben Elazar, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Rav Shimon ben Elazar said another halacha in the name of Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, another machloket, and this gets into a new topic, really, a new discussion, the final point of the day. We know the Torah tells us, Mimtzo cheftzecha, in Yeshaya it says, on Shabbat you're not allowed to engage in cheftzecha. Your own business. We're not allowed to be involved in our own business. So Beit Shammai, we're going to see, extends this even to certain things that are not necessarily directly business, but even have an element of mitzvah, even though you're not allowed to be involved. Let's see. So the thing is, you're not allowed to arrange shidduchim for girls for erusin, to get married. So you can't have these discussions, even though it's not mamash, real business like sales, etc. But it's associated, and that's not appropriate. Very interesting. It's Beit Shammai. Hold on, we're not done yet. You can't arrange for a child to learn, means arrange a tutor, or for him to learn a profession. I mean, these are all things that actually, it's a mitzvah. There's mitzvot associated, but you can't do, said Beit Shammai. Very interesting. You cannot go to comfort mourners on Shabbat, Rashi learns, because it causes tsar. You're not allowed to have tsar on Shabbat, so it causes pain, not allowed. Also, Beit Shammai says you can't visit the sick on Shabbat. The same thing about tsar. Beit Hillel matirin. But Beit Hillel says in all these cases it's permitted. Now why does he say that? So it says Rashi, because it says Mimtzo cheftzecha, your own business you're not allowed to be involved with, but velo cheftze shamayim. If it's mitzvah, if it's something that's Hashem's chefetz, His desires, His business, it's mutar to do on Shabbat. And regards to those other things of nichum avelim and those things, he says it doesn't cause tsar. It causes the opposite. It causes someone to feel better, so therefore they're mutar to do on Shabbat.
But people don't sit shiva on Shabbat.
Right, we don't sit shiva on Shabbat, that's true. We don't do it in an overt way, in an obvious way. But the point is, Beit Hillel says it's only a problem of business if it's not chefetz shamayim. If it's not exactly. V'gam lachashov cheshbonot. We are allowed to do mutar. Okay? Hirhurim mutarim uleshadecha banodecha. איך זה עושה? איך זה הולך? איך זה הולך? נו?
Two questions. What's the halacha with the zav at the end? Machloket?
Let me just turn this off and say, so we're finishing the bottom of Bet Amud Aleph. We'll pick up tomorrow with Bet Amud Bet.